In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and farmland, there lived a boy named Ethan Parker. He was 10 years old, with messy brown hair that always seemed to stick out in odd directions no matter how much his mother tried to comb it down. Ethan wasn't the tallest kid in his class, nor was he the loudest, but he had a curious mind and loved asking questions about everything, especially space. His bedroom walls were covered in posters of planets, rockets, and astronauts floating in zero gravity. To Ethan, the universe wasn't just something far away. It felt like home. One crisp Monday morning, Mrs. Thompson, Ethan's 5th grade teacher, stood at the front of the classroom holding a stack of papers. She smiled warmly at her students as she announced their assignment for the day. "Class," she said, "today we're going to write essays about what our parents do for work. It can be anything from being a doctor to owning a bakery. Let's celebrate the hard-working people in our lives." The room buzzed with excitement as the children began brainstorming ideas. Most kids talked eagerly about their parents' jobs. Sarah said her mom worked at the local hospital, while Jake proudly declared his dad owned a car repair shop. But Ethan sat quietly, staring at his blank paper. His pencil hovered over the page, unsure where to start. Unlike his classmates, Ethan's father didn't have a job everyone could easily understand. In fact, most days Ethan himself struggled to explain what his dad did. Finally, after a few minutes of hesitation, Ethan started writing. His handwriting was neat and careful, each letter pressed firmly onto the lined paper. When he finished, he read over his words with satisfaction. At the top of the page, in bold capital letters, he wrote, "My dad works at NASA." Below that, he added details about how his father helped build spaceships and worked on secret projects that would one day change the world. Ethan even included a sentence about how his dad told him they were building something so big, so incredible, that no one has ever seen anything like it before. When it came time to share, Ethan's heart raced. Public speaking wasn't his favorite thing. He hated feeling all those eyes on him. But today felt different. Today he wanted to tell the class about his dad. Standing up from his seat, he cleared his throat nervously and began reading aloud. "My dad works at NASA," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "He helps build spaceships and is working on something big, something no one has ever seen before." At first, the room was silent. A few students leaned forward curiously, intrigued by the idea of spaceships and secrets. But then, someone snickered. It was Tommy, the class clown, who whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Yeah, right, like your dad works for NASA." More giggles followed, spreading like wildfire across the classroom. Even some of Ethan's friends smirked, shaking their heads as if to say, "Nice try." Mrs. Thompson, sensing the growing tension, stepped, and quickly. She gave Ethan a stern look, her arms crossed over her chest. "Ethan," she said sharply, "don't make things up just because you want attention. We all know your father drives a delivery truck for the local grocery store." Her tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. Ethan's face flushed bright red. He opened his mouth to protest, to insist that what he'd written was true, but the laughter drowned him out. One boy called out, "Yeah, Ethan, maybe next time you'll tell us your dad's an astronaut." Another chimed in, "Or a superhero." The teasing grew louder, more relentless, until Ethan felt tears prickling the corners of his eyes. Humiliated and defeated, he slumped back into his seat, clutching his essay tightly in his hands. For the rest of the day, Ethan avoided looking anyone in the eye. During recess, he stayed inside, pretending to read a book while secretly replaying the scene in his head. Why hadn't anyone believed him? Didn't they know how proud he was of his dad? Sure, his father wasn't around much. Sometimes weeks would go by without seeing him. But when he was home, he always made time for Ethan. They talked about stars and planets, and his dad promised him that someday he'd show him the amazing things he was working on. By the time school ended, Ethan felt exhausted. As he trudged home along the dirt path that led to his house, he wondered if maybe Mrs. Thompson was right. Maybe he had exaggerated. After all, how could his dad possibly work at NASA when everyone else thought he drove a truck? For the first Time doubt crept into Ethan's mind, making him question everything he knew, or thought he knew, about his father. When he walked through the door, his mom greeted him with a smile. "How was school today?" she asked cheerfully, setting a plate of cookies on the table. Ethan hesitated, debating whether to tell her about the essay and the ridicule. Before he could decide, he noticed the calendar hanging on the wall. There was a red circle around tomorrow's date, accompanied by 3 simple words: "Dad comes home." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow his dad would be back, and maybe, just maybe, he could finally prove to everyone that he wasn't lying. That night, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to his ceiling, he made a promise to himself. No matter what happened, he wouldn't let anyone laugh at him again. Not about this. Not about his dad. Because deep down, he still believed in the stories his father told him. The ones about spaceships and missions and protecting Earth. And if anyone doubted him, well, they'd just have to wait and see. Ethan woke up the next morning with a mix of excitement and nerves bubbling inside him. Today was the day his dad would come home, and he couldn't wait to see him. He had so many questions swirling in his mind. Questions about spaceships, NASA, and the strange things his father sometimes hinted at during their late-night conversations. But most importantly, Ethan wanted answers that would silence the teasing and prove to everyone, especially Mrs. Thompson, that his dad really did work at NASA. As Ethan got ready for school, his mom bustled around the kitchen, humming softly to herself. She seemed happier than usual, her eyes sparkling as she packed lunches and tidied up the countertops. "Your dad will be here tonight," she said with a warm smile, glancing at Ethan. "I'm sure you two will have lots to talk about." Ethan nodded eagerly but didn't say much. His mind was racing too fast to focus on anything else. What would his dad say when he heard about yesterday's incident? Would he be mad, disappointed, or would he understand how hard it was for Ethan to stand up for himself? At school, Ethan kept to himself more than usual. During recess, instead of playing tag or soccer with his classmates, he sat on the swings, kicking at the dirt beneath his feet. The memory of the laughter from the previous day still stung, and he found himself replaying the scene over and over again in his head. Why hadn't anyone believed him? Was it because his family wasn't rich or famous? Or was it simply easier for people to dismiss what they didn't understand? By the time the final bell rang, Ethan felt both relieved and anxious. Relieved because the long hours of pretending everything was fine were finally over, and anxious because he didn't know what to expect when he got home. Would his dad actually bring proof of his job at NASA? Could he explain why he disappeared for weeks at a time without warning? These thoughts weighed heavily on Ethan's shoulders as he walked back along the familiar dirt path toward his house. When Ethan stepped inside, the smell of freshly baked cookies greeted him. His mom stood at the stove stirring a pot of soup, while his dad's worn leather jacket hung on the coat rack near the door, a clear sign that he was already home. Ethan's heart leapt. Dropping his backpack on the floor, he ran into the living room where his dad sat on the couch flipping through a magazine. "Dad!" Ethan exclaimed, throwing his arms around him. For a moment, all the doubts and fears melted away. His dad smelled like cologne and coffee, just like he always did after a long trip. But something about him felt different this time. Instead of wearing his usual casual jeans and t-shirt, he was dressed in a crisp suit that looked far too formal for their small-town life. Even his shoes were polished to a shine. His dad chuckled, hugging Ethan tightly before pulling back to look at him. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice deep and reassuring. "Missed me?" Ethan nodded vigorously. Then, remembering the events of the past day, his expression turned serious. "Dad, something happened at school," he began hesitantly. "They didn't believe me when I told them you worked at NASA. They laughed at me." His dad's brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment, Ethan worried he might be upset, but then his dad sighed and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I figured something like this might happen," he admitted. "People don't always understand what we do, not even your teachers sometimes." "We?" Ethan asked, tilting his head in confusion. "Who's we?" His dad hesitated, glancing briefly toward the kitchen to make sure Ethan's mom wasn't listening. Lowering his voice, he leaned closer. It's complicated, Ethan, but yes, I work for NASA, or rather a division within NASA that very few people know about. We're working on projects that could change the way humanity sees itself and its place in the universe. Ethan's eyes widened. This sounded exactly like the kinds of stories his dad used to tell him before bedtime. But now, hearing it again and seeing the seriousness in his dad's face, he realized it wasn't just a story. It was real. What kind of projects? Ethan whispered, unable to contain his curiosity. His dad smiled faintly, though there was a hint of sadness in his expression. Projects that protect Earth, he said simply. But I can't tell you more than that right now. Not yet. Before Ethan could press further, his mom called them to the dinner table. As they ate together, Ethan noticed how tired his dad looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and every few minutes he checked his phone as if expecting an urgent message. Despite his exhaustion, however, his dad listened intently as Ethan recounted the events of the past day, the essay, the laughter, Mrs. Thompson's disbelief. When Ethan finished, his dad's jaw tightened ever so slightly. I'll take care of it, he promised firmly. Tomorrow I'll go to your school and set the record straight. No one should treat you like that, not for telling the truth. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. After dinner, Ethan helped his mom clean up while his dad retreated to the study, closing the door behind him. Through the crack beneath the door, Ethan caught glimpses of blue light flickering. A laptop screen, maybe? Whatever his dad was doing, it seemed important. Important enough that he barely came out until late into the night. Later, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything his dad had said. Protecting Earth? Secret divisions of NASA? It all sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. Yet deep down, he knew his dad wasn't lying. He'd never lied to him before. Not about anything big, anyway. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, his stomach fluttering with anticipation. His dad was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in one hand and a folder filled with papers in the other. He glanced up as Ethan entered the room and gave him a reassuring smile. "Ready?" his dad asked. Ethan nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. "What are you going to say to them?" His dad stood up, placing the folder carefully into his briefcase. "Just the truth," he replied. "And trust me, Ethan, they're going to listen." On the drive to school, Ethan stared out the window, watching the trees blur past. His dad remained quiet, focused on the road ahead. Though Ethan couldn't see it, his dad's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, gripping it tightly. Whatever he planned to reveal today, it clearly weighed heavily on his mind. When they arrived at the school parking lot, Ethan hesitated before getting out of the car. "Dad," he said softly, turning to look at him, "are you sure about this? What if they still don't believe us?" His dad reached over and ruffled Ethan's hair affectionately. "Then that's their problem, not ours," he said with a confident smile. "You've done nothing wrong, Ethan, remember that." Feeling a surge of courage, Ethan climbed out of the car and followed his dad toward the school entrance. Inside, whispers spread quickly as students and teachers alike noticed the unfamiliar figure walking beside Ethan. Heads turned, eyes widened, and soon a crowd began to gather. Mrs. Thompson appeared moments later, looking flustered. "Mr. Parker?" she asked, her voice tinged with surprise. "What brings you here today?" Ethan's dad stepped forward, his posture calm yet commanding. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," he said politely. "I'm here to address a misunderstanding regarding my son's recent essay. If you could gather the class in the auditorium, I'd appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone." Mrs. Thompson blinked, clearly taken aback. "Of course," she stammered. Let me get everyone organized." As the students filed into the auditorium, Ethan stayed close to his dad, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. Whatever happened next, he knew it would change everything, for him, for his classmates, and perhaps even for the entire town. Little did anyone realize, including Ethan, that what his dad was about to share wasn't just proof of his job at NASA. It was a revelation that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the world. and the universe beyond. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as students and teachers filed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and confusion. Word had spread quickly about Mr. Parker's unexpected visit, and everyone wanted to know why such a mysterious man had shown up unannounced during school hours. Ethan sat near the front, his heart pounding in his chest. Beside him stood his dad, calm and composed, though Ethan noticed his hands gripping the edges of the briefcase he carried. It was clear that whatever was inside held answers. Answers big enough to silence an entire room. Mrs. Thompson hurried to the stage, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She adjusted her glasses nervously before addressing the crowd. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice wavering slightly. "As you may have heard, we have a special guest today, Mr. Parker, Ethan's father. He's here to, clarify some details regarding Ethan's recent essay." Her words trailed off awkwardly, and she glanced at Mr. Parker, silently urging him to take over. Taking this as his cue, Mr. Parker stepped forward. He placed the briefcase on the podium and turned to face the audience. His presence commanded attention. Even the rowdiest students fell silent as they waited for him to speak. Clearing his throat, he began in a firm yet gentle tone. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "I understand there has been some confusion about my profession, and by extension, about my son's claims, regarding my work. Today I'm here to set the record straight, not just for Ethan, but for all of you." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Some students leaned forward eagerly, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Mrs. Thompson sat stiffly in her chair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Ethan, meanwhile, felt a surge of pride swell within him. For the first time since the incident in class, he didn't feel alone. His dad was standing up for him, and not just for him, but for the truth. Mr. Parker clicked a button on a small remote control, and the screen behind him lit up with an image of Earth suspended in the vastness of space. The photograph looked strikingly real, almost too vivid to be fake. Gasps rippled through the audience as people craned their necks to get a better look. "This is our planet," Mr. Parker continued, pointing to the image. "Beautiful, isn't it? But what you might not realize is that Earth isn't as isolated as it seems. Out there in the depths of space are civilizations far older and more advanced than ours. And some of them, well, let's just say they aren't exactly friendly." The room grew quieter, the weight of his words sinking in. Even the teachers exchanged uneasy looks, unsure whether to believe what they were hearing. Was this some elaborate prank? Or was Mr. Parker truly revealing something extraordinary? He clicked the remote again and the screen changed to show a series of photographs. These weren't ordinary pictures. They depicted massive triangular ships hovering in orbit around Earth, their sleek designs unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The ships were enormous, dwarfing even the largest human-made satellites. Their surfaces shimmered with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. "These are not renderings or artist impressions," Mr. Parker explained. "These are actual images captured by surveillance drones deployed by NASA. They belong to extraterrestrial vessels, ships that have been monitoring us for decades." The auditorium erupted into whispers. Students whispered to each other, pointing at the screen in disbelief. Teachers leaned closer, squinting at the images as if trying to find evidence of tampering. Mrs. Thompson's jaw dropped, her earlier skepticism crumbling under the weight of undeniable proof. Ethan watched everything unfold with wide eyes. He had never seen these photos before, but somehow they didn't surprise him. Deep down, he'd always known his dad worked on something extraordinary. Seeing it confirmed in front of the entire school made his heart race with awe and admiration. Mr. Parker paused, letting the gravity of the images sink in before continuing. "For years, humanity has suspected the existence of intelligent life beyond our planet. Recent advancements in technology have allowed us to detect unusual activity near Jupiter's orbit. What we discovered defies belief. Fleets of unidentified vessels moving erratically, seemingly observing Earth." He clicked the remote once more and the screen displayed footage captured by one of the surveillance drones. In the video, several triangular ships darted across the black void of space, performing maneuvers impossible for human technology. At one point, the camera zoomed in on the surface of one ship, revealing complex geometric patterns etched into its hull. The design was both alien and mesmerizing, evoking a sense of wonder mixed with unease. To put it simply, Mr. Parker said, his tone growing more serious, "These aren't tourists. They've been watching us, studying us for reasons we can only speculate about. And that's where I come in." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a badge, holding it up for everyone to see. The gold emblem on the badge bore the insignia of NASA, surrounded by stars and stripes. Beneath it were the words, "Project Starshield, Earth Defense Initiative." "I am part of Project Starshield," Mr. Parker announced. "Our mission is to safeguard humanity against potential threats from extraterrestrial civilizations. We develop technologies, strategies, and protocols to ensure Earth remains protected should these visitors decide to act." The room was dead silent now. No one dared laugh or interrupt. The skepticism that had filled the air just moments ago had vanished, replaced by a collective sense of awe and fear. Even Mrs. Thompson sat frozen in her chair, her face pale with shock. One brave student raised his hand timidly. "So, aliens are real?" he asked, his voice trembling. Mr. Parker nodded solemnly. "Yes, they're real. And while we don't fully understand their intentions, we must prepare for any possibility. That's why projects like Starshield exist, to protect us if or when the need arises." Another student spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that why you're gone so much, because of your job?" Mr. Parker smiled faintly, glancing briefly at Ethan. "Partly, yes. My work takes me to secure locations where secrecy is paramount. It's not easy being away from home, but knowing I'm helping keep Earth safe makes it worthwhile." By the end of the presentation, the entire auditorium buzzed with questions and exclamations. Students bombarded Mr. Parker with inquiries about spaceships, aliens, and how exactly Project Starshield operated. Teachers, too, approached him afterward, apologizing profusely for doubting Ethan's story. Mrs. Thompson herself walked up to Mr. Parker, her cheeks red with shame. "Mr. Parker," she stammered, I owe you an apology. I had no idea. I shouldn't have dismissed Ethan's claim so carelessly. Please forgive me." Mr. Parker shook her hand warmly. "It's understandable to question things you don't understand," he replied kindly. "But remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction." As the crowd dispersed, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. For days, he'd carried the burden of ridicule and doubt, wondering if anyone would ever believe him. Now, thanks to his dad, he could finally hold his head high. His classmates surrounded him, peppering him with questions about his dad's job and Project Starshield. Instead of teasing him, they treated him with newfound respect, eager to learn more about the secretive program protecting Earth. For Ethan, the day marked a turning point. No longer was he the boy whose stories were laughed at. He was now the son of a hero, a man working tirelessly to shield humanity from dangers lurking in the cosmos. As he stood beside his dad, basking in the glow of admiration and curiosity, Ethan realized something important. Believing in the impossible wasn't foolish, it was courageous. And courage, he decided, was something worth celebrating. The days following Mr. Parker's revelation at school felt like a whirlwind for Ethan. His classmates, once quick to laugh and tease him, now treated him with awe and respect. They bombarded him with questions during breaks, eager to learn more about his dad's mysterious job and the alien ships he'd mentioned. Sarah, who usually sat quietly in class, cornered Ethan after lunch one day. "Do you think your dad will let us see those spaceships someday?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Jake, the boy who had mocked Ethan just days ago, now walked beside him in the hallway, asking if aliens really looked like the ones in movies. Ethan didn't have all the answers. His dad hadn't shared much beyond what he revealed in the auditorium, but he soaked up the attention anyway. For the first time, he felt like he belonged, like people finally understood how special his family was. Even Mrs. Thompson went out of her way to apologize again, dedicating an entire lesson to space exploration and the importance of believing in possibilities beyond everyday life. She even hung a poster of the solar system on the classroom wall, pointing out NASA's logo proudly as she lectured. But despite the newfound admiration, Ethan couldn't shake off the feeling that there was still so much left unsaid. His dad's presentation had answered some questions, but it had also raised countless others. What exactly were these alien ships doing near Earth? Were they planning to attack? And most importantly, how close was humanity to being ready for whatever might come next? That evening, as Ethan helped his mom clear the dinner table, his dad announced that he wanted to talk. "Come outside," he said, gesturing toward the backyard. Curiosity tugged at Ethan, and he followed without hesitation. The night sky stretched above them, dotted with stars that seemed to twinkle brighter than usual. His dad carried a small telescope under one arm and set it up on the grass. "Look through this," Mr. Parker instructed, adjusting the lens until it pointed directly upward. Ethan peered into the eyepiece, gasping softly as he saw Saturn's rings shimmering clearly against the dark expanse. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet his mind kept drifting back to the triangular ships and the alien civilizations his dad had described. "Dad," Ethan began hesitantly, lowering himself onto the grass beside his father. "Why are the aliens watching us? Do they want something from Earth?" Mr. Parker sighed, leaning back on his elbows as he stared at the heavens. "That's the question we've been trying to answer for years," he admitted. "From what we've observed, their behavior suggests curiosity rather than hostility, at least for now. But curiosity can turn dangerous if they decide we're either a threat or useful." Ethan frowned. "Useful? How?" His dad hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Earth has resources, water, minerals, energy sources, that might be valuable to them. If they determine that taking those resources benefits them more than leaving us alone, then—" He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine. The idea of aliens invading Earth sounded like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but hearing it from his dad made it feel terrifyingly real. "So Project Starshield is supposed to stop them?" he asked. "Yes," Mr. Parker replied firmly. "Our mission is twofold: to monitor their activity and to develop defenses capable of protecting Earth if necessary. We're building technology far beyond anything publicly known, weapon systems, cloaking devices, even experimental propulsion methods that could allow us to travel faster than light." Ethan's jaw dropped. Faster than light travel? Cloaking devices? It sounded impossible, yet his dad spoke with such conviction that Ethan couldn't help but believe every word. "Does anyone else know about this?" he whispered. "Only a handful of people," his dad explained. "Project Starshield operates under strict secrecy. Most governments aren't even aware of its existence. The fewer people who know, the safer we are." For a long moment, Ethan simply gazed at the stars, trying to wrap his head around everything he'd learned. The universe suddenly felt both vast and fragile, full of wonder but also danger. "Do you think they'll ever come here?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," his dad admitted. "But if they do, we'll be ready." The next morning, Ethan woke up early, unable to sleep any longer. His mind raced with thoughts of alien ships, secret missions, and the incredible work his dad was doing. As he got dressed for school, he noticed his mother standing by the window, staring pensively outside. Her expression was troubled, and when she turned to see him, she gave him a faint smile. "You okay, Mom?" Ethan asked, tying his shoelaces. She nodded, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just thinking about your dad," she said softly. "He works so hard, doesn't he?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but it's important stuff. He's saving the world." His mom chuckled lightly, ruffling his hair affectionately. "You sound just like him when you say that." At school, the buzz surrounding Project Starshield showed no signs of fading. During recess, a group of students gathered around Ethan, peppering him with even more questions. "What's the coolest thing your dad gets to do?" Tommy asked, his earlier mockery replaced by genuine curiosity. Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "Probably flying test missions," he said confidently. He told me they use experimental spacecraft to practice maneuvers in case the aliens show up. Tommy's eyes widened. Flying spaceships? Seriously? Ethan grinned, feeling a swell of pride. Yeah, cool, right? Even Mrs. Thompson seemed different. Gone was the stern teacher who had ridiculed Ethan. In her place was someone genuinely interested in learning more about space and science. She invited Mr. Parker back to give another presentation later in the week, this time focusing on the history of human space exploration and how far humanity had come since the Apollo missions. When Mr. Parker arrived for the second presentation, he brought along additional materials, diagrams of futuristic spacecraft, videos showing simulations of potential alien encounters, and even a piece of meteorite recovered from Antarctica. The students listened intently, hanging on his every word. By the end of the session, several kids declared their desire to join NASA someday, inspired by the stories of bravery and innovation. But not everyone was convinced. A few teachers whispered among themselves, questioning whether Mr. Parker's claims were too far-fetched to be true. One particularly skeptical teacher, a gruff man named Mr. Harris, approached him after the presentation. "This all sounds impressive," Mr. Harris said gruffly. "But do we really need to worry about aliens attacking us? Seems like a lot of effort for something that might never happen." Mr. Parker met his gaze steadily. "Better safe than sorry," he replied. "History has shown us time and again that preparation saves lives. Would you rather wait until it's too late?" Mr. Harris fell silent, unable to argue with the logic. Reluctantly, he nodded and walked away, leaving Mr. Parker standing beside Ethan, who beamed with pride. That evening, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling, he thought about everything his dad had taught him, not just about space and aliens, but about courage and determination. Protecting Earth wasn't just a job, it was a responsibility. And though the task ahead seemed daunting, Ethan knew his dad, and the team at Project Starshield, wouldn't rest until humanity was safe. For the first time, Ethan truly understood why his dad worked so hard and why he disappeared for weeks at a time. It wasn't just about building spaceships or developing new technologies, it was about giving people hope. Hope that no matter what dangers lurked in the cosmos, Earth would always have its guardians ready to face them. Little did Ethan know, however, that the challenges facing humanity were closer than anyone realized. Somewhere beyond the stars, forces were gathering, forces that would soon test the limits of Project Starshield and push Ethan's dad to the brink of what was possible. The weeks that followed Mr. Parker's revelations at school brought a profound shift in Ethan's life, and not just because his classmates stopped teasing him. Now, whenever he walked into the classroom, heads turned with admiration instead of mockery. People whispered about how cool it must be to have a dad working on secret missions for NASA. Even Mrs. Thompson went out of her way to praise Ethan during lessons, often using his dad's work as an example of why curiosity and belief in possibilities were important. But beneath the surface, Ethan noticed subtle changes in his father too. Though Mr. Parker tried to act normal when he was home, there was a tension in his movements, a heaviness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Late at night, Ethan would hear his dad pacing in the study or talking quietly on the phone, his voice low and urgent. Sometimes the blue glow of his laptop screen spilled into the hallway, revealing diagrams and charts Ethan couldn't decipher. One evening, while helping his mom set the table for dinner, Ethan decided to ask the question that had been weighing on his mind. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "do you think Dad is okay? He seems stressed." His mom paused mid-motion, setting down a plate of steaming spaghetti. Her expression softened, but there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. "Your dad has a big responsibility," she said gently. "He carries the weight of the world on his shoulders sometimes. But don't worry, he's strong, and he loves what he does." Ethan nodded, though he wasn't entirely convinced. The thought of alien ships hovering near Earth still sent chills down his spine, and knowing his dad was directly involved in protecting humanity made everything feel more real and more dangerous. That night, after dinner, Mr. Parker called Ethan into the study. The room smelled faintly of coffee and paper, and stacks of folders cluttered the desk. His dad sat in the chair, rubbing his temples as if trying to ease a headache. When Ethan entered, he looked up and gave him a tired smile. "Hey, buddy," he said, gesturing for Ethan to sit beside him. "I need to talk to you about something." Ethan perched nervously on the edge of the chair, bracing himself for bad news. "What is it, Dad?" Mr. Parker leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You remember those ships I told you about, the ones near Jupiter? Well, we've detected increased activity recently. They're moving closer to Earth." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Closer?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "How close?" "Too close," his dad admitted grimly. "We're monitoring their trajectory, but if they keep heading this way, we might have to take action sooner than expected." "What kind of action?" Ethan asked, his mind racing with images of battles in space and explosions lighting up the sky. Mr. Parker hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Project Starshield has developed defensive systems designed to deter any hostile approach. We'll use them only if absolutely necessary, but we can't afford to wait until the last minute." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and pride swelling inside him. His dad wasn't just talking about theories or plans anymore. He was preparing for war, a cosmic battle between humanity and beings from another world. It sounded like something out of a movie, but Ethan knew better now. This was real. The next day at school, Ethan found it hard to concentrate. His thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation with his dad, replaying every word over and over again. During recess, Sarah approached him cautiously, sensing something was wrong. "Are you okay, Ethan?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "I'm fine," Ethan replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about stuff." Sarah tilted her head curiously. "Does it have to do with your dad's job?" Ethan hesitated, unsure whether he should share what he'd learned. In the end, he shook his head. "Not really," he lied. "It's nothing." Though he wanted to tell someone, anyone, about the looming threat, he knew he couldn't. His dad had trusted him with sensitive information, and breaking that trust felt unthinkable. Instead, Ethan kept his worries locked away, carrying the burden silently. That evening, as Ethan helped his dad pack his briefcase for another trip, he finally spoke up. "Dad," he said softly, "when you go, will you be safe?" His dad paused, looking at him with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I'll do everything I can to stay safe," he promised. "But Ethan, no matter what happens, remember this. I'm doing this for you, for everyone on Earth. Protecting our planet is worth any risk." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, but he blinked them away quickly. "I know," he whispered. "I'm proud of you, Dad." His dad pulled him into a tight hug, holding him longer than usual. "Thank you, buddy," he murmured. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." Over the next few weeks, reports of strange phenomena began making headlines around the world. Bright lights streaked across the skies in places like Norway, Australia, and Canada, leaving witnesses baffled. Scientists dismissed them as meteor showers or atmospheric anomalies, but Ethan knew better. Those weren't meteors. They were alien ships inching closer to Earth with each passing day. At home, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Phone calls came in at odd hours, and Mr. Parker spent long nights hunched over his computer, poring over data and coordinating with other members of Project Starshield. Ethan tried to help however he could, fetching coffee or keeping his mom company while she waited anxiously for updates. Then, one fateful evening, the call came. Mr. Parker answered his phone, listening intently as the voice on the other end relayed urgent news. When he hung up, his face was pale but resolute. "It's time," he said simply, turning to face his family. "They're almost here." Ethan's stomach churned with dread. "What happens now?" "We activate the defenses," his dad explained, "and hope they turn back." Before leaving, Mr. Parker knelt down in front of Ethan, placing both hands on his shoulders. No matter what happens, stay strong, okay? You're my greatest accomplishment, Ethan, never forget that. With those words, he grabbed his briefcase and headed out the door, disappearing into the night. Ethan stood frozen, watching the taillights of his car fade into the distance. For the first time in his life, he truly understood the meaning of sacrifice. Hours later, the sky lit up with flashes of light so bright they illuminated the entire town. From his bedroom window, Ethan watched in awe as massive triangular ships descended through the clouds, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal. Then suddenly streaks of energy shot upward from hidden locations around the globe, meeting the alien vessels in a dazzling display of power. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then slowly, the alien ships began retreating, vanishing into the depths of space as quickly as they had arrived. By morning, news outlets were buzzing with speculation about what had happened. Governments denied involvement, claiming ignorance, but Ethan knew the truth. His dad, and countless others like him, had saved Earth from an unimaginable fate. When Mr. Parker returned home later that week, exhausted but triumphant, Ethan ran to him without hesitation. "You did it!" he exclaimed, tears streaming down his face. "You protected us." His dad hugged him tightly, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it together, buddy." Humanity stood united, and that made all the difference. From that day forward, Ethan carried a newfound sense of purpose. Inspired by his dad's bravery, he vowed to follow in his footsteps, dedicating his life to exploring the stars and protecting the planet he loved. After all, thanks to his dad, Ethan knew one thing for certain. Even in the vastness of the universe, Earth would always have its guardians ready to face whatever lay beyond.